Okay, so we need to test controllers. We want to make sure that controllers are being instantiated, right? That they're not null, that they're being injected, that they're being auto-wired, right? All that happens, the infrastructure does this all for us. We want to make sure that they're up and running. They're ready to start receiving HTTP requests, right? So to do that, here's an example, a toy controller. The only thing that it does is that it responds with the hello world, right? So we would like to be able to run a unit test, for instance, that if I hit this particular URL, well, it's returning that particular string, right? Or it could be somewhat more interesting. Might be, here is I'm asking for all the services, right, on the database, and I'm expecting to see 3 services there, right? And with some array, some JSON, some Java lists of services, and I know there's 3. There better be 3 in there. I like to count that. So same thing. So this same idea. So let's start off with something trivial, such as this, that is returning just a simple string. Right? Okay. Notice that here the annotation is at controller. Instead, we've been using a REST controller, but it's the same thing. The REST controller annotation is just a combination of an at controller with the at response body. Right? So it's been split into 2. So a REST controller is just a combination of these 2. So if you remove REST body from here and you replace the controller here with at REST controller, we're back where we are now. Okay. So REST controller is just a syntactic sugar for the combination of those 2. So yeah. So this is mapped to the root slash. And it's just calling greeting and returning just a simple hello world. So one of the things I would like to be able to do is just verify that our application even boots up. Is my application even running? Right? That I would like to be able to run a Maven test. Is it even running? Right? So we would perhaps in a test here notice that we have annotated as an at spring boot test. Right? So this will run whenever you say Maven clean install, right, and it'll run and verify that that it boots up, right, and that your application is ready to go. Okay. And in here in the in the ... you could put all sorts of other asserts that you might want to check to see, at boot time, right, when the server boots up, that you might want to verify, right? Maybe you're expecting to have some certain files there. Maybe you're expecting to have certain properties already configured, right? So this is a good time for you to verify that everything's dandy, right? At boot time, only once. Okay. So one of the things that you might do is verify whether a controller is up and running, right? So for instance, this auto-wire, you can auto-wire a controller. Just like you can auto-wire a repository, right? You can auto-wire a repository into a controller, right? That means that the infrastructure is going to instantiate for you the repository, so you can interact with JPA. Yes, just like you can do that, you can also auto-wire the controller, right, from your tests. So from your tests, you can say, well, I want an instance of that controller, and so in my context loop, the things that you could do is, I want to assert, right, that controller is not null, right, that indeed is being injected, right, that it's being instantiated, so that my controller is all good. Right, there's nothing wrong with my controller. It's up and running. It's ready to accept HTTP requests coming in. Right. You can also now that you have a hold of the controller, right, you can start validating whether you can establish communication, HTTP communication with the controller, right, and actually send an HTTP request to the controller and see if you get back the expected response. In this particular case, we know that we have an endpoint that returns a hello world string, and we can verify that indeed that endpoint is actually responding to that string. So to do that, we can configure the Spring Boot tests. The Spring Boot test, we can configure it and say that this is a web environment, and to use just a random port. So it not necessarily has to be 8080 or any particular port. Just it'll choose a particular random port, right? And and you can ask for it to be injected to you here in the local server port. It'll create the port for you, and it will be passed on to you, so you can actually use it to establish an HTTP request. So, for instance, there's a REST template that it's being auto-wired here. Again, part of the underlying test framework, and you can generate a post or put or by default it's a GET, right? So this will generate a GET to that particular port, and it'll respond through HTTP. In this case, just a string "Hello World," and then you can compare it against the expected value of "Hello World." This will start up this server, right? And will actually send out an HTTP request. And so you can verify whether the server is ready to receive HTTP requests. Again, this might be a little bit too much, right? Whether you actually want to verify the HTTP communication. Ideally, you want to have tests that allow you to isolate the controller all by itself, right? Independent on whether it can establish an HTTP request.